Welcome to the Mark Twain Library. Muy bienvenidos todos a la Biblioteca Mark Twain. Today we have one of our favorite authors, Edgar Allan Poe. I find him fascinating, right? He's that thriller, I don't know, very conflicted mind, but he usually teaches us something about those extremes that we could have as humans. And so today we have the story of the oval portrait, and we want to welcome our friend Jack Fagot, who has kindly been part of this Ink and Insight where we share with everybody the reading of a story, of a poem, and also the discussion of those writings and how they apply to today. Now, my name is Lili Sevilla, and I'm the academic director. And today I would like Jack, and I would like to challenge him, is like, when you think of Edgar Allan Poe, what melody comes to mind? And ask you to join us by inspiring us with one of your melodies.
Yeah, we can do that. We sure can do that.
Today we're going to also do a Spanglish. So feel free to join and participate in the language that you feel comfortable with. Let's welcome Jack with a warm applause.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, I'm going to play a piece of music that I think pretty much could be a portrait of Edgar Allan Poe. A musical portrait of Edgar Allan Poe, if that's conceivable, which I think it is, it would be something like that. That's a very stormy piece, isn't it? That's a prelude by Chopin. Doesn't sound like Chopin, but it is Chopin. Well, the thing is, Chopin had many facets. He was a much more complex guy than people tend to think, you know? You say Chopin and you think of the nocturnes, very lyrical and melancholy pieces, but he had many demons inside of him, many demons, and when they took the parole, then things like that could happen.
Well, that piece reminds me of Wagner.
Well, it would have been Chopin who influenced Wagner, and not the other way around. If there is indeed a connection, that would be the direction. Chopin would have influenced Wagner. As a matter of fact, he did. It's a well-known fact. Chopin influenced everybody after him. So did Wagner, as a matter of fact. Well, it remains a secret what kind of liquor I keep here.
What you're drinking is a secret.
Well, we have a very beautiful story today. A very beautiful story in the fantastic line. You know, it's fantastic literature. Supernatural, perhaps, that you will decide to which degree it is supernatural. Is it a horror story in a way? Yeah, it is very gothic. No doubt about that. It's very gothic. The ambience, the place, everything happens in a castle, in an abandoned castle, in the middle of the night and in the middle of a storm. So there you have all the usual ingredients of the Gothic nightmare, you know? All the abandoned castles, storm, and many other interesting things. It's, by Poe standards, it's a short story. You know, it will take 10 minutes to read it. The Oval Portrait. And it's a very interesting case of a story within a story, you know? A tale to the second degree, a la segunda potencia, a story within a story, is one of those things. So we will just read. We all know the basic about Poe. He was born in 1809. He died in 1849, and he was a phenomenal writer. The world remembers him for his Gothic stories, his horror stories. But he didn't only wrote horror stories. He wrote detective stories, stories of ratiocination, of deduction and induction. You know, he created this special character called Auguste Dupin, which was a detective, which absolutely the forerunner of Sherlock Holmes, Miss Marple, Inspector Maigret, all the detectives, Peter Falk, Columbo, whatever, name it, name it, you know. So he was the creator of all of that. He created what's called the detective story. It's not la historia policíaca, porque no es de policías, es de detectives, to be very specific, you know. And he created many stories that pretended to be humorous. Unfortunately, humor was not his thing, you know, and those are not very good. I know what I'm telling you that. Very, very disappointing.
Agatha Christie did that. Agatha Christie did that better.
Agatha Christie is clear, comes from the lineage of Edgar Allan Poe. No question about that. Oh, very clearly so.
I mean about the human also.
Yeah.
There's a story called The Golden Bug.
The Golden Bug is one of those stories it's a very cerebral story. It has to do with the deciphering of a cryptogram, you know? Although Auguste Dupin doesn't appear in that one. He could as well have appeared, but it's in the very style. Yeah. He wrote basically 4 wonderful stories in that vein. The Purloined Letter, the Crimes of the Rue Morgue, the Assassination of Marie Roget, and the Golden Bug. And Auguste Dupin only appears in the first 3 of them. You know, but the Golden Bug, you're right, is very much a story of.
You have to read like 5 times.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just going through the story once.
No.
Me at least.
It's fascinating. It is a fascinating story. I will never forget.
It's quite long.
The things. Yeah, it's a rather long. It's a rather long story. So it's one of Poe's longest stories. But Poe was also a phenomenal poet. Wonderful poet, you know, and I'm not saying just by The Raven. I mean, you will have to put Annabel Lee, The Haunted Palace, City Under the Sea, Eulalie, To Helen, Israfel. He wrote a lot of, no, not a lot. He wrote about 55 poems, and they are unequal in quality. But Edgar Allan Poe, when he died, he was sure he was going to be remembered primarily as a poet, not as a storyteller, but as a poet. Mm-hmm. Well, he is remembered rather as a storyteller, you know. a very successful storyteller. He knew very well how the mechanism of narration worked. He knew that very well. But he did write some wonderful poetry, you know.
The only thing that he missed to cover all the literary genres was making a play.
Well, he didn't. He never.
But he wrote essays.
He wrote essays, a few, not many. He wrote one novel, The Adventures of Arthur Gordon Pym from Nantucket. That's the name.
Right.
The Adventures of Arthur Gordon Pym, which Arthur Gordon Pym you can think Edgar Allan Poe, Arthur Gordon Pym. You know, from Nantucket. It's a wonderful novel, a pre-surrealistic novel with amazing things. I read it only once. I was still quite young, and it haunted me for a long time. And it's not a horror story. It has some horrifying moments, but it's not a horror story. It's not a Gothic story. So one novel, about 70 stories, about 55 poems, and a few essays. The philosophy of composition is one of them. The philosophy of composition. In that essay, he pretends to explain and reveal all the machinery of how he constructed the raven. And it's an enormous exercise in rationalization, an enormous exercise in basically playing with the reader, because frankly, I mean, there is no way he could have written The Raven with the meticulous, well-reasoned, cerebral, almost mathematical method that he describes. No way in the world. You know, it's funny how much fun he had. He composed The Raven. The Raven is kind of a nightmare. Also, there's something a little bit surrealistic about The Raven. It's very dark. I mean, a raven that enters a room in the middle of the night, in the middle of the tempest, you know, and only can say one word, which is nevermore, where the ravens are not supposed to talk. It's not una lora, you know, it's a raven. Ravens are not, they cannot talk. And yet you have a raven that's special, very malignant, perverse, ominous bird in the middle of the night, you know.
There's a famous publication or edition of The Raven that is illustrated by, I don't know, I think it's André Doré or
Gustave Doré.
Gustave Doré.
See, yeah, I know those illustrations. Yes, Gustave Doré. Yes, the famous grabador. You know, he illustrated the Bible. He illustrated Rabelais, Pantagruel, Gargantua Pantagruel. He illustrated the Perrault stories for children. You know, he illustrated the Divine Comedy by Dante. That's especially impressive. The scenes in hell and the scenes in paradise are of fantastic beauty. Fantastic beauty. If you can avail yourselves of those illustrations, they are very worth, you know.
They haunt you.
Oh, they haunt you, yes.
My
Yes.
mother brought home a very heavy edition of the complete works by Edgar Allan Poe with a very unusual plastic cover.
Uh-huh.
And I was 9 or 10. I read the poem along with the illustrations. I had nightmares.
Yes. Well, it's almost an overdose. It's an overdose of terror that you inflicted on yourself. You know, no wonder you had nightmares. But Doré illustrated the Don Quixote as well. He illustrated some amazing things, you know, amazing things.
French.
He was French, Gustave Doré. Yeah, and he was mostly un grabador. Not so much a painter. He did paint, but he became famous for his grabados. How do you say that in English, grabados? Engravings. Mm-hmm. Engravings, I believe it is. So any occasion that you have to avail yourselves of a volume of Doré's engravings, you have to take it. You know, sometimes you get just the engravings for the Divine Comedy without the text, just the engravings, and it's very worthwhile. very worthwhile to have. Unbelievable. I have the utmost admiration for him. Anyways, Edgar Allan Poe, well, he wrote that essay, Philosophy of Composition, in which he pretends to convince us, and he fails miserably, he pretends to convince us that he did construct the Raven according to certain principles in a very well-reasoned and lucid way. Well, no. The Raven is completely a hallucination. It's a work of madness. It's a nightmare. It's a horrible thing. It came from the bottom of his, from the hell he had inside of him. No? But then he disguises all that with reason, you know? He pretends to have written it in a very methodic, calculated, self-conscious way. It is just an enormous lie. That's what the philosophy of composition is. And it's an enormous lie. But it is very interesting. It remains very interesting. He goes into reasonments completely ludicrous. He says, well, the most beautiful thing on earth would be a very beautiful woman. The most poetic thing in the world is death. So, if I put them together, I will get the most wonderful, mysterious thing in the world will be the death of a beautiful woman. That's the kind of reasonment that he convokes. No, nobody's going to buy that. But it is a nice exercise in false, self-delusory reasonment, you know?
Maybe he didn't really want to expose his methods, his composition skills.
Well, he did. Or that's what he pretends, you know? That's what he pretends, but he doesn't convince anybody. No. That whole thing was constructed a posteriori, a lot of time after the writing of the poem, and no, it's not like that.
But Edgar was a heavy drinker, and I wonder, I don't know if he reached the age of 40, but in such a short life, he was able to achieve this huge work, literary work. It's incredible.
Oh yes.
It's a very short life, 39 or 40.
So, yes, I don't know exactly if he reached the 40, or he died at 39. I don't know exactly which date of the year he was born and which date he died. I don't know, 39 or 40 in any case. He wrote an abundant oeuvre. You know, so again, stories,
40.
Poetry.
40 years.
40 years,
Yes.
says Lily.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lily.
January 19 to October 7.
Okay, well, there you go.
When was his birthday?
19,
No, but when was it? January.
January.
19.
And died in October. So he reached the 40. 40, yeah. He died in Baltimore under very mysterious circumstances. Very mysterious circumstances. Nobody knows exactly what provoked his death. For many, many years, the day of his birthday, some stranger, mysterious, veiled gentleman would walk in the cemetery in the middle of the night, go to his grave, and leave a bottle of cognac with roses for him. And that tradition was carried on for many years, you know. And everybody knew that the morning after Edgar Allan Poe's birthday, his grave would have inevitably the cognac bottle and a bunch of roses. So it's a beautiful idea, you know. As I understand, it is not done anymore. Maybe the guy who used to do it died, or nobody wanted to continue with the tradition, but it's very, very appropriate, you know, very poesque, very Poenian. So we go into the story, the oval portrait. Now remember, Edgar Allan Poe lost his mother when he was 2 years old, and his father had abandoned him. Both mother and father were comedians. I mean, provincial comedians, you know, not that they were performing Hamlet and Macbeth and King Lear, you know, provincial comedians, you know, small comedians. And they went from one city to another, and they went around. Welcome to the Edgar Allan Poe Festival. We are about to start reading precisely The Oval Portrait, which is one of Poe's less known stories. You know, few people know this story. It's not among the most famous one, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a relatively short story. So here we go. Just pay attention at how much information he manages to pack into the first paragraph. It's an unbelievable tour de force. In that paragraph, he dispenses all the necessary information for the reader to enjoy the story. In one paragraph, it's unbelievable how dense of meaning it is. The amount of data that he managed to encapsulate in that first paragraph. But I'm not going to stop reading. I'm going to read it through. The chateau into which my valet had ventured to make forcible entrance, rather than permit me, in my desperately wounded condition, to pass a night in the open air, was one of those piles of commingled gloom and grandeur which have so long frowned among the Apennines, not less in fact than in the fancy of Mrs. Ratcliffe. So we know that the protagonist is sick. We know that he's in the middle of the night. We know that he has a valet, that he have entered kind of surreptitiously into an abandoned castle. We know that the castle is gloomy and has some grandeur that reminds us of the prose of Mrs. Ratcliffe, which was a novelist. A little bit also in the vein of Edgar Allan Poe, you know. So we learn a lot of things. To all appearance, it had been temporarily and very lately abandoned. We established ourselves in one of the smallest and least sumptuously furnished apartments. It lay in a remote turret of the building. Its decorations were rich, yet tattered and antique. Its walls were hung with tapestry and bedecked with manifold and multiform armorial trophies, together with an unusually great number of very spirited modern paintings in frames of rich golden arabesque. In these paintings, which depended from the walls not only in their main surfaces, but in very many nooks which the bizarre architecture of the chateau rendered necessary, in these paintings, my incipient delirium perhaps had caused me to take deep interest, so that I bade Pedro to close the heavy shutters of the room, since it was already night, to light the tongues of a tall candelabrum which stood by the head of my bed, and to throw open far and wide the fringed curtains of black velvet which enveloped the bed itself. I wish all this done that I might resign myself, if not to sleep, at least alternately to the contemplation of these pictures and the perusal of a small volume which had been found upon the pillow and which purported to criticize and describe them. So much information. So much information. He already created an atmosphere. The atmosphere is given and very eloquently, you know. And a lot of things we know. We even know the name of the valet, Pedro. Long I read, and devotedly I gazed. Rapidly and gloriously the hours flew by, and the deep midnight came. The position of the candelabrum displeased me, and on reaching my hand with difficulty, rather than disturb my slumber valet, I placed it so as to throw its rays more fully upon the book. But the action produced an effect altogether unanticipated. The rays of the numerous candles, for there were many, now fell within a niche of the room which had hitherto been thrown into deep shade by one of the bedposts. I thus saw a vivid light, a picture all unnoticed before. It was the portrait of a young girl just ripening into womanhood. I glanced at the painting hurriedly and then closed my eyes. Why I did this was not at first apparent even to my own perception. But while my lids remained thus shut, I ran over in my mind my reason for so shutting them. It was an impulsive movement to gain time for thought, to make sure that my vision had not deceived me, to calm and subdue my fancy for a more sober and more certain gaze. In a very few moments, I again looked fixedly at the painting. That I now saw aright, I could not and would not doubt. To the first flashing of the candles upon the canvas had seemed to dissipate the dreamy stupor which was stealing over my senses, and to start me at once into waking life. The portrait, as I have already said, was that of a young girl. It was a mere head and shoulders, done in what is technically termed as vignette manner. What is vignette manner? La viñeta, el estilo viñeta es el tipo de cuadro, o en el cine también se usa viñeta, en que se ve una imagen en el centro y todo el borde está en oscuro. Todo está como en tinieblas y solo hay un foco sobre la imagen en el centro. Entonces está el marco, luego una especie de segundo marco de tinieblas en el centro del cual poco a poco, no bruscamente, poco a poco se decanta una imagen. Eso es lo que se conoce estilo vignette. Se usa en el cine mucho. Antonioni's Two Women, wonderful movie with Sophia Loren, ends with a very beautiful vignette where see Sophia Loren with her daughter and everything around them becomes dark. You know, it's very beautiful. Entonces se usa en el cine y se usa también en la pintura, el estilo vignette. Entonces no se ven los bordes, es como una bruma en el centro de la cual se distingue generalmente el retrato de alguien. Y este es el estilo vignette. The portrait, I have already said, was that of a young girl. It was a mere head and shoulders, done in what is technically termed as vignette manner, much in the style of the favorite heads of Sully. The arms, the bosom, and even the ends of the radiant hair metted imperceptibly into the vague yet deep shadow which formed the background of the wall. The frame was oval, rich gilded, and filigreed in Moresque. As a thing of art, nothing could be more admirable than the painting itself. But it could have been neither the execution of the work, nor the immortal beauty of the countenance, which had so suddenly and so vehemently moved me. Least of all could it have been that my fancy, shaken for its half-slumber, had mistaken the head for that of a living person. I saw at once that the peculiarities of the design, of the vignetting, and of the frame must have instantly dispelled such idea, must have prevented even its momentary entertainment. Thinking earnestly upon these points, I remained for an hour, perhaps half sitting, half reclining, with my vision riveted upon the portrait. At length, satisfied with the true secret of its effect, I fell back within the bed. I had found the spell of the picture in an absolute lifelikeliness of expression, which, at first startling, finally confounded, subdued, and appalled me. With deep and reverent awe, I replaced the candelabrum in its former position. The cause of my deep agitation being thus shut from view, I sought eagerly the volume which discussed the paintings and their histories. Turning to the number which designated the oval portrait, I there read the vague and quaint words which follow. And this is the point where the story within the story begins. I mean, he can walk into the room, it's a turret, es una torrecita, ¿verdad? He's there en una cama que estaba llena de cortinas de terciopelo negro, las corrió, había un candelabro, lo puso apuntando hacia un rincón de la torrecita donde había un nicho oscuro, no sabía que había algo, y en el nicho había el cuadro, the oval portrait of a very young girl. And he discovered a book that described the content of and the origin of each one of those paintings. So he's going to go immediately to the painting of the girl. Why? Because he was impressed. He was, in fact, overwhelmed, almost fascinated and terrified by the sense of life that the painting emanated. It's as if the painter had really captured a piece of life. It was alive. One of those things that you see, it's alive, you know. That's what I felt. I remember when I saw the Christ painted by Velázquez in El Prado, the Prado Museum in Spain. I saw it and I said, well, this guy is alive. He's going to come down from his cross and ascend to heaven. I mean, he's more alive than almost all the people who are watching it here, looking at it. There's more life in this painting than in my own face, probably. Well, that's a very disturbing feeling. That's a scary, moving, disturbing, awe-inspiring feeling. When you have the feeling that a painting is alive, my God. And I can feel that also in pictures, in photographs of all people. Photograph. I remember a book I had with a photograph with a woman, half naked, in fact. It was an erotic picture, and her eyes and her beauty and her expression, my God, that was scary. It's as if she was looking at me rather than me looking at her. She was luring me. She was attracting me to her. It was unbelievable. I was scared. It happens to me once in a time. Once in a while, happen these kind of things. So here starts the tale within the tale, the story within the story. That procedure is called in French mise en abîme. Une mise en abîme. Una puesta en abismo. No me pregunten por qué. De esas cosas raras de los franceses. Une mise en abîme is when you have, for instance, theater within the theater. What very classic, great example of theater within the theater you can mention me, for instance? Very classic work. Very wonderful playwright, where you have a scene of theater within the theater, and that is very important dramatically for the functioning of the piece. Well, in Hamlet, there is that moment when the Prince of Denmark, Hamlet, has the troupe of players to come to the palace and perform a play called La Muerte de Gonzago, the death of Gonzago. And in that play, Gonzago is killed in the same fashion that his father had been killed by his uncle Claudius, who usurpated the throne of Denmark. And when Claudius was there with Gertrude, Hamlet's mother, when they started to look at that, which was a representation of their crime, a recreation of the crime, and Hamlet had planned it for that effect, Claudius just went livid with rage. Gertrude was beside herself. Everybody was shocked because Hamlet was representing with those actors exactly the way that his father had been assassinated, And it's a wonderful case of theater within the theater, What's a very famous opera where you have kind of an opera within an opera? Ruggiero Leoncavallo Pagliacci, Los Payasos, the clowns, It's a troupe of clowns, again, and they're performing in small villages, and Antonio, the main character, his wife had been cheating him with another payaso. So in the middle of a representation, in the middle of the spectacle, with all the people there watching, Tonio goes and kills his rival, and people don't know, people think that's fake. People think that's part of the drama, that's part of the fun, that's part of the whole spectacle. Nobody knows that it's actually, an assassination is actually taking place in that very moment under their eyes. Until Tonio turns to the audience and says, La comedia è finita. I get goosebumps all over my body, La comedia è finita. You can stop me if you want. Call the police. La comedia è finita. Like saying, there's no more comedy. Now starts real life. But people thought the assassination was part of the drama, the thing, It's tremendously effective. It's very effective. Leoncavallo only wrote that good opera. He was all his life, he invested in writing operas. He wanted to be as famous as his colleague Puccini, But Giacomo Puccini had many great operas, La Bohème, Manon Lescaut, Tosca, Madame Butterfly, Turandot, many great hits. Whereas poor Leoncavallo only had one triumph in his whole life, one only thing, and that is Pagliacci, the clowns. That and a little tune which you have heard. L'aurora di bianco vestita, called Mattinata. A Gaviota completely robbed the piece. I'm sorry to say, they completely plagiarized the piece and L'aurora di bianco vestita.
The credits appeared on the record.
They did not give poor Leoncavallo the slightest credit. That's very unethical. It is a plagiarism. It's awful. It happens to be their best song on top of everything. Well, because it's not theirs. And you know something? I admire enormously Carlos Guzman. I know he is my friend, and I admire him enormously. Enormously. I think he's a great, had a great melodic flair. So if you want to do an adaptation, do it, by all means. But give the credit. So I'm going to, now our song, L'Aurora, adaptation, arrangement from or inspired by or d'après or selon or after Leoncavallo's Mattinata. That's the least. That's the least, my dear friend. It's very immoral otherwise. It's awful what they did.
I have the record.
Well, yeah. No, they didn't change one note. They copied him verbatim, ad literam, every single note, you know. Mocedades did that as well. Con ay, amor de hombre, pari, pa, 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 pirarara. That's from a zarzuela by Tomás Bretón. A zarzuela, Spanish zarzuela from La Leyenda del Beso, yes, 150 years ago. I did the same thing. You cannot do that, for Christ's sake. You have to acknowledge, you have to acknowledge, you know, the source for your inspiration, you know. The least you can do. It's a matter of decency.
And Juan Pao, with a Russian composer.
La estrella de David.
Russian composer, very famous.
Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff, Prokofiev. Yeah. But what Juan Bao's song was it? I'm pretty sure, you know. I mean, they did. I mean, that can be done. That can be done. I mean, Liszt, no less than Franz Liszt, wrote a lot of rhapsodies, and he called them paraphrases, using themes of very well-known operas by Verdi, Bellini, Rossini, etc. But he always called them paraphrases on themes by Bellini's Norma. For instance, he was honest, you know? And, well, Gaviota was not. What can I say? I don't know how to put it. So here goes the story within the story. She was a maiden of rarest beauty, and none more lovely than full of glee. And evil was the hour when she saw and loved and wedded the painter. He, passionate, studious, austere, and having already a bride in his art, she, a maiden of rarest beauty, and not more lovely than full of glee, all light and smiles, and frolicsome as the young fawn, loving and cherishing all things, hating only the art which was her rival, dreading only the pail and brushes on other untoward instruments which deprive her of the countenance of her lover. It was thus a terrible thing for this lady to hear the painter speak of his desire to portray even his young bride, but she was humble and obedient, and sat meekly for many weeks in the dark, high turret chamber where the light dripped upon the pale canvas only from overhead. But he, the painter, to glory in his work, which went on from hour to hour, from day to day. And he was a passionate and wild and moody man who became lost in reveries, so that he would not see that the light which fell so ghastly in that lone turret withered the health and the spirits of his bride, who pinned visibly to all but him. Yet she smiled and still on uncomplainingly, because she saw that the painter, who had high renown, took a fervent and burning pleasure in his task, and wrought day and night to depict her so loved him, yet who grew daily more dispirited and weak. And in sooth, some who beheld the portrait spoke of its resemblance in low words as of a mighty marvel, and approved no less of the power of the painter than of his deep love for her whom he depicted so surpassingly well. But at length, as the label drew nearer to its conclusion, there were admitted none into the turret, for the painter had grown wild with the ardor of his work, and turned his eyes from canvas merely, even to regard the countenance of his wife. And he would not see that the tints which he spread upon the canvas were drawn from the cheeks of her who seated beside him. And when many weeks had passed, and but little remained to do, save one brush upon the mouth and one tint upon the eye, the spirit of the lady again flickered up as the flame within the socket of the lamp. And then the brush was given, and then the tint was placed, and for one moment the painter stood entranced before the work which he had wrought. But in the next, while he yet gazed, he grew tremulous and very pallid and aghast, and crying with a loud voice, "This is indeed life itself," turned suddenly to regard his beloved, and she was dead. So the painter, having that unbelievable power, transferred life from the wife to the canvas. That is the basic thing that happened there. He was so passionate with his painting, so meticulous, such attention to the slightest detail, that in a way he parasited life from the model, his wife, his very young wife. He absorbed, he sucked her life and transferred it to the canvas. So the canvas was alive in a very disturbing way, and the wife slowly, without complaining, in silence, became weaker and pallid and aghast until she died, So the final proclamation of the painter, "This is indeed life itself," what does that remind you? Right now, from the top of your head, what famous movie has an expression that's obviously taken from here? Frankenstein. It's alive, it's alive. When Dr. Frankenstein, when he discovered that the monster actually can move and open his eyelids, and he goes like crazy with ecstasy. He's alive, he's alive, he's alive. Truly crazy, completely disturbed. He's alive. It was the miracle of creating life out of a monster that was made of pieces of corpses, of cadavers, of corpses, The Frankenstein is just un ensamblaje de fragmentos anatómicos robados a las tumbas. I mean, Dr. Frankenstein was a grave robber, a grave digger. It is that horrible. But of course, he created life by the virtue of un relámpago. You remember? El relámpago cae en la torre del castillo y la electricidad entra en el cuerpo de Frankenstein y se empieza a mover y abre los ojos. He's alive, he's alive. Is the fantasy, the eternal fantasy of creating life. Of taking things that are dead and managing to imbue life into those things, into those anatomic segments basically sewn together. Un surcido de pedazos de cadáveres. And he manages to make a living creature out of that. So he's ecstatic. Anybody would. Anybody would, and he does the same. This is indeed life itself. She's alive, she's alive. But he was spoken of the canvas. He meant the canvas is alive. What he did not observe was that life slowly transferred to the canvas had abandoned the model. The model was exsangue, sin sangre. No, he was exsangue, no blood into her. She had just withered and died without the slightest complaint. She was very, very, she understood the passion of the painter. She didn't protest. She didn't complain. She simply let things happen. And sure, it was an enormous triumph for the painter. Enormous triumph. So much so that the visitor, the intruder, as soon as the candelabrum hit the niche where the painting was, he was immediately shocked. He was like, oh my God, is that a person? Is that a canvas? She's looking at me. She's alive. And he was in awe. He was awestruck. He was perplexed. Anybody would have. What is the most iconic fantasy story having to do with a famous painting that reproduces life?
The picture.
Picture of Dorian Gray, Oscar Wilde. Mm-hmm. And it is a Victorian, and it's also a Gothic story, and it is a horror story in many ways. In the picture of Dorian, what happens in the picture of Dorian Gray? Well, the picture is a wonderful, reproduction of Dorian Gray. Or Dorian Gray was a dandy. He was the most handsome guy in London. He was legendarily handsome. He was perfection itself. He didn't want to grow old, have wrinkles and baldness and all the things that we do have, or at least I do have. No, and but what happened is that the painting became how can we
with all the flaws.
The painting became the portrait of his soul, no longer of his beauty, but of his soul. So the more he became mean, selfish, an assassin, cruel, despicable, the painting started to grow and develop all sorts of horrible things, wrinkles and all sorts of horrible things, So the painting became the reflection of his moral and spiritual decay, of his abandonment to decadence and to perversity, to depravity. And he remained dandy. He remained totally dandy. For him, it was not a problem. But that painting, which he hid in a closet, in a chamber that was always locked. He was the only to have access. And every time he went and saw the picture kept getting uglier and uglier and horrifying and disgusting, because the painting absorbed all the evil that his soul was capable of. The painting became una etopeya. Etopeya, it's a description of the ethos, the ethos, la parte ética de una persona. That's kind of the way it is. There are two kinds of description of a person. These are technical terms, but it doesn't hurt. Una prosopografía es una descripción física de una persona. Una etopeya es una descripción ética de una persona. Entonces, with Dorian Gray, you have a tremendous divergence, The prosopografía remained beautiful. The man did not age 1 minute. It was the mystery. His friends had died. People went, and Dorian Gray remained as beautiful, as fresh, as handsome as he had always been. But the painting, on the other half, kept absorbing all the evil of his soul and became horrible as the hell he had inside,
But from the model or from the painter absorbed
From Dorian Gray. From Dorian Gray, but there is no question that the painter did manage to do something quite miraculous. I mean, the painter is a crucial character. He created a painting, a portrait that had the capacity, had the power to contain, to reproduce, to express, to illustrate all the evil that he had inside, you know? So for him, it was eternal youth. For the painting, it was eternal and progressive degradation. The moral degradation went into the painting, not into him. So you have two things there, you know? The picture was a mirror of his soul, of his depraved soul. And he remained just beautiful like an angel. So that has a lot, and obviously Oscar Wilde knew this story. Obviously, because they had many, many things in common. No question about that. No question about that. That's for sure. That's for sure. And now that I mentioned Frankenstein, well, I'm probably being inaccurate, and that should be checked, because we will have to know, I mean, who came. Mary Shelley came before Poe. Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein, came before Poe. Of course, I don't know the exact year of publication of the oval portrait, but this, it's life itself. And He's Alive from Frankenstein, you know, probably Poe took it from Mary Shelley. That's my guess. That I could be wrong, but I would be surprised. I think Mary Shelley came first, and then Poe took it. And then Oscar Wilde took it from Poe. And that's what you nowadays call intertextualidad, intertextualité. People no longer talk of plagiarism, they talk about intertextualidad. There's always some degree of intertextos. So un intertexto para este cuento es Frankenstein, Mary Shelley. He's Alive. Y un intertexto para Oscar Wilde es Poe y Mary Shelley. Y así la historia de la literatura, esto es un enorme tejido de intertextos, ¿verdad? Unos tienen que ver con... No tanto se trata de robos, sino de inevitables influencias. Es que nadie se puede construir desde cero. Uno escribe desde lo que ha leído y va a reproducir lo que ha leído. Todo eso que uno ha digerido, toda esa literatura maravillosa, va a salir en la obra de uno cuando uno escriba, de una u otra manera. Entonces, no es un robo y no es un plagio. Although people can use a bit too... in a too irresponsible way, the notion of intertextualidad. That's a very fashionable word. It's good to know it. Nowadays, in academic circles, you talk about intertextuality, you cannot go wrong. It's very fashionable nowadays, you know. There's no longer plagiarism, it's intertextualidad. So Gaviota would say que eso es intertextualidad. No, but there are limits to everything, you know. There are limits to everything. No. What they did is very ugly. And I am their greatest fan. I do admire them. My God. See, I like their music. I love their music. I'm a great fan.
Carlos, though. It's not like Carlos. But Rodolfo Emilio.
Yeah. Sí. Y más, porque aquí sí hay intertextualidad, porque recuerden en West Side Story by Bernstein, Maria, a girl named Maria, and Penelope by Serrat, which started the same way. see? All the three songs start with Penélope. So there's Penelope by Serrat, Maria by Leonard Bernstein from West Side Story, and then Maria la de Gaviota.
I have the name of the song that Juan Pao sings based on a classic piece. It's Stranger in Paradise by Alex Borodin.
Alexander Borodin. So it would have been es in the las estepas del Asia Central.
It's from an opera called Prince Igor.
No. Es un poema sinfónico, es una piecita para orquesta sola. Una piecita de 10 minutos en las estepas del Asia Central. Well, that is a very plagiable melodía. Yeah, because it's gorgeous and beautiful. You see, but you cannot do that. Yeah, one thing is to coincide in. Okay. So Bernstein did it, and Serrat did it, and Gaviota did it. But to take the whole damn picture, the whole piece from beginning to end, de pe a pa, de a a zeta, you know, that's no longer an adaptation or an arrangement or a paraphrasis, as Liz would have called it. That's simply just, you know, rob at gunpoint. You know, no, I can't accept that. I can't accept that. I don't think that's honest. So a lot of people think that La Aurora di Bianco Vestito is an inspiration by Gaviota. Well, it is not. It happens to be one of the only two little pieces that Leoncavallo was famous for writing. He was already robbed of one of them. Matinata is a little piece. That's a little piece. His great masterwork is Pagliacci. When Tonio sings, you know, ride Pagliaccio, singing to himself in front of the mirror while putting, you know, all his colors. He was a clown. He had to go on stage and perform. The show must go on. Even if his wife was being stolen from him, he was heartbroken, destroyed, and he still had to walk in the scene and put up a good, decent performance. It's very difficult. It's a terrible thing. I have lived that kind of situation in my life. I'm not Canio, and I would not kill anybody, but you know, I know a little bit of that, you know. Vesti la giuva, la faccia infarina. Me pongo el vestido y me lleno de harina la cara. Y ahora tengo que hacer reír a la gente porque para eso me pagan. Mientras que el Pantaleón me roba mi Colombina, porque usaban los personajes de la comedia del Pantaleón, Colombina, Pierrot, ¿verdad? Todos esos. Ese terrible área, qué área más desgarradora, qué área más desgarradora. Leoncavallo es un hombre de una pieza, pero qué buena pieza. Pobrecito, pasó toda la vida tratando de replicar y no le funcionó. No le funcionó. He was a one-shot guy. Nada, no pegaba nada. Nadie conoce nada que no sea eso. Tal vez un estudioso, tal vez se escribió la biografía de Leoncavallo, hayas oído lo demás, pero no se interpretan nunca. Lo que se llama nunca. De Leoncavallo se toca Los payasos y La Aurora di Bianco Vestita, que ahora la gente cree que es de Gaviota. Pero la Aurora de Bien Consciente es una cancioncita, encantadora, pero es una cancioncita. De peso que sea la ópera Pagliacci.
No está relacionada.
No está, no tiene nada que ver. No tiene nada que ver. Pero sí, ese es el tremendo drama, ¿verdad? Del payaso que tiene que hacer reír a la gente mientras su corazón sangra.
¿Tú recuerdas el concierto de Pavarotti en el 95, 96? Es la única presentación que dio aquí en Costa Rica.
Sí.
Era con una voz muy desgastada.
Sí.
Ya en una condición muy...
Sí, horrible.
Yo fui, sí.
En el Estadio Nacional,
Porque
sí.
él cantó.
Cantó posiblemente esto.
Y para muchos, yo en ese momento tenía 24, 25 años, uy, pero eso yo lo veo, eso es la aurora de Gabriel.
Sí.
Sí, la aurora.
Sí, la Aurora, sí. Bueno, ya tenés la respuesta.
En ese momento,
Sí.
yo me di cuenta, ¿verdad?
Sí,
Y
sí.
había un caballo en la pantalla.
Sí.
Mi mamá y yo, pues yo no podía pagar el concierto, ¿verdad? Imposible de pagar. Entonces pusieron unas pantallas en el Parque Nacional.
Sí.
Y yo fui con mi mamá.
Sí.
Y entonces vimos el concierto ahí. Pero estaba súper mal, Pavarotti.
Estaba malillo. Ya sí, empezó frío. Y le advirtieron, en la sabana pega un chiflón, maestro.
Sí.
No cante en la sabana, no, es que hay que llenar la sabana. Y cobró $1 millón. Eso cobraba Pavarotti por cantar, $1 millón. Me guardo no me voy a guardar mi opinión. No sé ni para qué le digo si nunca lo hago. Anyways. Una bella voz es un don de Dios. No va uno a putearla, no va uno a prostituirla, no va uno a mercachiflearla. Yo con una voz así, bueno, no sé qué haría. Le daría gracias a Dios 500 veces todos los días de mi vida. Entonces, una cosa que fue una gratuidad, que fue una dádiva divina, una bendición, vos la agarrás para cobrar $1 millón por una hora de canto, donde incluso cantaban otros. Él cantó unas pocas piecitas. La cosa era ver a Pavarotti. Y es muy mal. La primera parte tuvo varios gallos que se le pegaron y flemas. Fue horrible, terrible. Y yo no estuve, pero esto me lo contó un amigo cantante. Un amigo cantante que es uno de esos cantantes que tiene una voz así tan chiquitilla que sin ampliación, sin amplificación no se oye nada. No se oye nada de nada. Bien, canta bien, pero no proyecta. Entonces una vez, yo no sé por qué, de perversidad mía, llego después de un concierto, querido amigo, no hay duda de que sos un cantante de primera línea. Ya en la segunda línea no te oye nadie. No te cuento lo que me dijo Lili. Hijo de tal, sos un cantante de primera fila. En la segunda ya no te oyen, en la tercera menos, pero en la primera se te oyen. Eso, that was very perverse. No pude aguantarlo. No pude aguantarlo. De hecho, cosas con mis colegas tan horrorosas. Tenía otro amigo, barítono, que siempre se le pegaban los gallos. Siempre. Una vez llego al camerino y le digo, Enrique, mira qué interpretación la tuya. Mira, tengo la carne de gallina. La carne de gallina se me pone donde digo, entonces, gracias, macho. Maldito hijo de tal, ya cuando le cayó la peseta. Pero lo vacilaba tanto, y yo con eso, es muy buen hombre, él acepta esas bromas, ¿verdad? Entonces le inventaba montones de bromas. No cabe duda, Enrique, de que sos el barítono más gallardo de Costa Rica. Solo gallos. Sos de una gallardía impresionante, le decía. ¿Cómo no me retiró la amistad, Enrique? Así es de buena gente. Me salía con todo tipo de cosas. No, Enrique, no me trates de meter gallo por liebre, porque no todo con gallos, ¿verdad? Una vez cantó la traviata toda llena de gallos. Pero Enrique, eso es la gallata, no la traviata. Y lo vacilaba. Nunca se enojó conmigo. Así es de bella persona. Pero era legendario por sus gallos. Yo lo quiero mucho. In any case, so we have a nice intertext here, you know. Mary Shelley goes to Edgar Allan Poe, and both go into Oscar Wilde. So, is this a fantastic story? Can it be considered a fantasy story? ¿Puede la vida en efecto ser sustraída de un ser y plasmada en un lienzo?
Es fantasía, pero si el lienzo realmente refleja vida y uno ve y lo percibe,
Sí.
y le da esa impresión, esa fuerte impresión, chica, tal vez está exagerando, pero se lo está transmitiendo.
Sí, sí.
Se la está transmitiendo, pero no es que se la robó al modelo.
Tal vez eso es lo que buscan los pintores también, tal vez
La fantasía última de un pintor sería crear la vida. Claro, claro que sí. Pero no a expensas de otra persona. No drenándosela a otra persona para trasladarla al lienzo. Eso es un crimen. Y no es ni siquiera, es un crimen del que no se dio cuenta. Está tan obsesivo, tan absolutamente focalized in his painting, so absolutely absorbed by his painting that he pays no attention to his wife. His wife no longer exists except as an inspiration for his painting. He has put his art before life itself and before his beloved wife. Apparently not so much beloved, but you know, that's criminal, that's awful. This is a story of obsession, of very acute obsession, of very sick pathological kind of obsession. The obsession of a painter who wants to create life. Playing God. Well, playing God is always dangerous, isn't it? It's always kind of dangerous. The Greeks, from the times of 4th century before Christ, you know, Pericles, Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, they had this sin, el pecado de la ibris. A veces escriben ibris. El pecado de la ibris, H-Y-B-R-I-S. Ibris era el pecado del exceso. Y los dioses lo castigaban severamente en la filosofía y en la mitología griega antigua. Porque los dioses se sentían amenazados. Sentían que el ser humano estaba robándose atributos divinos y los castigaban furiosamente. El pecado de ibris era muy castigado. Un caso, Ícaro. Se pone sus alas con cera. Pero embriagado de gloria, vuela tan cerca del sol que se derrite la cera y Ícaro se precipita al océano y muere del impacto y muere ahogado, castigado por ibris. Prometeo robándole el fuego a los dioses. ¿Cómo se atreve para dárselo a los seres humanos? Por supuesto que lo castigaron por pecado de ibris. Lo amarraron a un peñasco y todos los días venía una arpía que se cebaba comiéndole las entrañas. Awful thing, awful thing. Hay montones de casos de ibris, de exceso, pecar por exceso, por tratar de emular a los dioses. Well, this painter definitivamente pecó de ibris, no question about that. What is going to be his reaction, you know? Because not till the end does he realize she was dead. Not at the end. What's going to happen with him now? Is he going to lose his reason? Is he going to go nuts? Is he going to spend the rest of his life punishing himself? You know, torturing himself? One can speculate. What would you guys do?
It's another story.
That's another story. That's the oval portrait part 2. You're right. Entonces, es el pecado de ibris. Esa es una palabra y un concepto interesante para tenerlo en cuenta. Pecó de ibris, pecó de exceso.
Bueno, la pintura tomó semanas de elaborar.
Sí.
Y no sabemos cuántas horas al día. No sabemos si ella se alimentaba bien o algo, simplemente que fue cayendo poco a poco hasta que falleció.
Sí.
Pero de una forma de verlo es que simplemente ella se abandonó por su amor, se abandonó al arte que él estaba haciendo.
For all we know, podría haber muerto de hambre. No tenemos el menor dato sobre cómo vivieron ese proceso.
Pero los demás lo notaban.
Los demás lo notaban, sí. Que ella iba languideciendo y palideciendo y adelgazando y poniéndose mohína y apagada. Nadie hacía nada. Todos fueron cómplices. You know?
Es una forma de suicidio también.
¿Perdón?
Es una forma de suicidio. O sea, no alimentarse, no comer.
Es una forma de suicidio. Sí. Es una forma de suicidio de parte de ella.
Pero aquí la vemos más como víctima.
La vemos más como víctima. Un exceso de docilidad, ¿verdad?
Estaba escuchando el audiocuento de Camino acá,
Sí.
en el carro, y me lo perdí en la lectura, pero
hay una parte, en el aeropuerto lo dijeron, no sé si está en la lectura, que ella tenía o sentía un gran desprecio por el arte.
Ah, sí,
Sí,
claro. Es que era la musa de su marido.
El arte era su rival. El pintor estaba absolutamente enamored. He was in love with his art. The art was her competitor, her rival. You know, of course she was jealous. No question about that. She was jealous. She had to compete against art, and art is a very powerful enemy to have. It's a very powerful rival. In fact, it is unbeatable, one could say, for certain artists. You know, I have known this kind of cases. I mean, not with this kind of conclusion, but yeah, partners who feel they're completely abandoned. The passion that consumes their companions has such intensity that they feel like they're nothing in the lives of the artist. You know, it has happened. You know, it happens every day in the world. That kind of situation. It will have much less dignity. I will not write a story about that, but yeah, I'm sure that can happen. ¿Me decías?
No, that you cannot compare soccer with paintings or arts.
Artes en general, sí. Sí, las artes son muy absorbentes. La música podría serlo, cualquier arte, la escultura, la pintura. Sí, existe eso. Existe eso.
Vamos
Sí.
a hacer con el contacto.
So, let's take a quick reading again. So, the chateau. What is a chateau? It's a castle, but it's a castle in a specific French fashion. Un chateau is a castle in a very French style of castle. You would not call Buckingham Palace a chateau. But you could call Versailles a chateau. Le Chateau de Versailles. So it's a special kind of castle, not just any castle. The chateau into which my valet had ventured to make forcible entrance rather than permit me in my desperately wounded condition to pass a night in the open air, one of those piles of commingled gloom and grandeur, a mixture of gloom, sadness, with majestic proportions. You know? It was huge, it was grandiose, but gloomy, sad. It was a building that emanated sadness, you know. So as usual, I mean, you cannot write a successful horror story without a mansion. You need a mansion. Even in movies as today, you need a mansion. There is no such thing as a horror movie without a haunted mansion. You have to have it. I give you an example. Alien, el octavo pasajero. No, más que terror es ciencia ficción. Podríamos decir que es un híbrido entre ciencia ficción y terror. Bueno, la enorme nave espacial llena de laberintos y recovecos es una mansión gótica. En algunos de esas esquinas y recovecos está el bicho, el monstruoso bicho, que abre la boca y le sale otra boquilla de adentro y salivea de una manera copiosa. Viscoso, monstruoso bicho. Y se camufla, ¿verdad? Miméticamente, como un camaleón, asumiendo la forma y el color de los entornos. Esa nave espacial es un castillo gótico, flotando en el espacio sideral, pero es un castillo.
Otra cosa que a mí me llama la atención es que da uno como con ganas de saber la historia del resto de los cuadros. Porque
Sí.
había muchos.
Había muchos. Sí, había muchos.
Había un manual que hablaba de cada uno.
Eso es cierto. Pero Poe es aquí muy focal. El cuadro que le roba el alma al visitante, que es un intruso, es un invasor, se metió porque no había nadie, porque estaba enfermo y la noche estaba fría y había tormenta, ¿verdad? El cuadro que lo atrapó, que lo capturó, que lo obsesionó, casi tanto como el pintor se obsesionó haciéndolo, es el de la mujer. Los demás no existen, no nos dicen nada de los demás cuadros. Y ese cuadro no lo vio al principio, atención, no lo vio al principio. Está en una torre, entonces imagínense que es un espacio cilíndrico, es una torre, ¿verdad? Redondito el cuarto. Está en lo alto del turret, es una pequeña torre, lo propio de un castillo. Y hay como nichos en las paredes, ¿verdad? En la tiniebla. Cuando él coge el candelabro, de pronto la luz entra en uno de esos nichos e ilumina el cuadro de la mujer. Estaba oculta, estaba presente y ausente, como lo sería un fantasma. Está y al mismo tiempo no está. Es un estar y no estar.
La posición del candelabro hacía que la sombra de una de las patas de la cama pegara sobre
y la tapara. Sí.
Entonces, al mover el candelabro, lo pudo ver así.
Lo pudo ver.
En el plano, y eso fue lo que impactó.
Y al derramarse la luz sobre el canvas, se queda así, esto no es posible, esto es life itself. ¿Qué es este prodigio, verdad? Entonces es una revelación, es una epifanía, es un descubrimiento súbito. Él no se imaginaba que hubiese eso en la alcoba. En primera instancia no vio nada. Sí, corazón.
Que, por ejemplo, la Mona Lisa, o sea, toda la fama y todo eso, un cuadrito ahí, en una inmensidad de cuadros lindísimos, bueno, digamos, más espectaculares que esa, pero la gente va a ver ese.
Sí. Qué tontería. Qué tontería. El Louvre está lleno de cuadros bellísimos. Y cuando yo fui, había tal masa de chinos tomando fotos a la Mona Lisa. Qué pereza. Con las cámaras.
La atracción de esta.
Como decía Cortázar, decía, todos andan con su cámara. A la señal de alguien van a apoderarse del mundo con las cámaras. Todos los chinos del planeta. Un comentario medio racista, pero no importa. Yo al Louvre estaba muy enfermo. Fui varias veces en silla de ruedas. En silla de ruedas tenía la ventaja. No te pagan, no te cobran, ni a quien te empuja la silla de ruedas. No le cobran a nadie. No tenés que hacer fila y te podés sentar delante de la Mona Lisa 6 horas si te da la gana y los demás tienen que esperarse. Pero fíjate que no tuve interés porque no me cautivó, no me sedujo. No, alguna vez lo fue, no lo dudo. Lo que es extraordinario de la pintura es la leyenda que va con ella. Pero la pintura como tal, cielo santo, mejor ver la barca de la Medusa de Jericó, el retrato de Chopin, el oficial de artillería en el caballo, la durmiente, que es aquella mujer que está como dormidita sobre un estanque negro, y montones de cuadros maravillosos. ¿Para qué ir a ver la Mona Lisa? Y es que además no la ven. Pasan en carrera, toman la foto y se van. Carrera la foto, es una cosa frenética.
El vidrio que le ponen tiene un reflejo terrible y con los flashes y todo.
No sale nada. No. Te sale un destello de luz.
Y estar empujando así.
Sí, horrible. No, la silla de ruedas a mí me permitió.
No es un acto de contemplación, es un acto de ego. Llegué hasta aquí.
Sí, es para poderle contar a los nietos.
¿Puedes ir al Louvre y no ir a ver la Mona Lisa?
Sí, poder decir, poner en tu currículum, vi la Mona Lisa. Eso no tiene sentido, es un acto de pura vanidad.
Tenemos que retirarnos, tenemos una emergencia familiar.
Ah, caramba, qué susto. Vayan, por favor. Muchas gracias, amigos. Bienvenidos para las próximas. De hoy en 8 no tenemos, pero seguimos de hoy en 15. Y que les vaya muy bien.
Muchas gracias.
Tranquilos. Entonces,
Pero digamos, comparado, estamos viviendo esta época. Ese cuadro atrae millones.
Ah, sí, claro.
¿Verdad?
Sí.
Comparado con esa historia.
Sí.
Tal vez lo que la hizo famosa fue el robo. Que lo robaron y apareció luego y todo.
Sí.
Eso fue en parte la gran fama.
Para mí es todos los mitos que tiene, su historia, su concepto.
Sí, su leyenda. Sí. No, eso es un lindo retrato, ¿quién lo va a negar? Y en efecto, claro, Da Vinci, y en efecto, her smile has something that's very enigmatic and very haunting and very mysterious and very seductive. I'm a man after all. I'm sensitive to the Mona Lisa's beauty.
What's
Oh,
in the back?
now those mythological things, they're like unicorns and things like in the back, you know. Well, that was typical. That's a typical background from the Renaissance. You would typically, you know, put some little things in the background to create some feeling of profondeur, of depth, you know. So that was a pictorial convention, you could say. And the important thing is her. No, it's a very beautiful, I mean, I would not mind if somebody gives it to me. I certainly would not throw it to the garbage, you know, to be sure. But no, I would not go in pilgrimage to the Louvre only to see the Mona Lisa. Not at all. Not at all. So, we established ourselves in one of the smallest and least sumptuously furnished apartments. Una torre. No estaba lujosamente amueblado. Sabemos que hay una cama con unas horribles cortinas de terciopelo negro. ¿Quién puede dormir así? No entiendo cómo usted se imagina, amiga, dormir en una cama con una, como un palio y con cortinas. ¿Ah? Eso solo se ve en las películas de miedo. Y típicamente sale una mano de las cortinas así, toda cosa espantosa.
Yo no hubiera podido dormir.
Y de hecho él pide que cierren las cortinas.
Sí.
También, o sea, todavía más oscuro.
No, pero él pide que las abran más bien. O me equivoco, espérate para ver. Its walls were hung with tapestry and bedecked with manifold and multiform armorial trophies. Sí, las paredes forradas con tapices. Tenía que ser, ¿verdad? Entonces, vean el ambiente opresivo. Edgar Allan Poe es un maestro in the creation of atmospheres. And he understood like nobody that a horror story must be atmospheric. So it must be very abundant in descriptions. And it's very Gothic, it's very Baroque. There are many things here. So the walls were hung with tapestry and bedecked with manifold and multiform armorial trophies, trofeos de blasones de castas y dinastías, trofeos de familias, insignias, heráldica, ¿verdad? Together with an unusually great number of very spirited modern paintings in frames of rich gold and arabesque. In these paintings, which depended from the walls not only in the mermaid surfaces, but in very many nooks with the bizarre architecture of the chateau rendered necessary. Como siempre en Poe, el chateau era un poco laberíntico, ¿verdad? Cosas que iban para un lado y para otro. No hay una sensación de un lugar seguro. Hay rincones por todo lado y esos rincones están en sombra y desde esos rincones te observan y te amenazan. Hay una sensación de impending doom, de danger. Somebody could be hidden here. Just anywhere here, somebody could be hidden. Yo no sé, yo duermo en un cuartito chiquitito y todo lo tengo a vista. Me molesta. No, Lila, es así soy de infantil. Cuando vivía en Houston, viví solo mucho tiempo en un apartamento que tenía un closet horroroso. Y a cada 5 minutos me iba a inspeccionar el closet. Capaz que esta vez sí veo algo. No hay nada. Durmámonos. Y ya estaba a punto de dormir. No, esta vez sí va a haber algo. Voy a ver. Y abría obsesivamente. No había nada. Me acostaba. No, ya ahora durmámonos. No. No podría ser que esta vez sea la de la gran revelación. Tal vez ahora sí haya algo ahí escondido. Voy a ver. Sal de ahí, pérfido demonio. No hay nada. No, ya me voy a acostar. No, it was horrible. Now I don't sleep unless I have everything within my view. With everything panorámico at hand. Es un cuartito muy pequeño. Bueno, la pared está el baño, pero el cuartito es muy pequeño. Y está lleno de mis libros y no hay ningún misterio. Todo lo he poblado de cosas que son muy mías, entonces no tiene ningún misterio. I could never sleep in a room like this. No way.
When I was young, my father tell me stories by terror, and I can't sleep during the night because I was looking under the bed.
I did that many times. Under the bed. That's one of the most horrifying places in the universe, is under your bed. And you know something? One had to conclude that the most dangerous place on earth to be is a bed. Because 99.9% of people die in beds. It is far more dangerous to be in a bed than to be in the middle of the sea or in the air, or in a balloon, or in a safari, is infinitely more dangerous. Statistically, it is more dangerous to be in a bed. I mean, you're going to die in a bed, very probably. Huh?
The bed falls. No es la culpa de la cama.
No, it's not bed's fault, but nevertheless, it's the locus, it's el lugar, it's the place where death will very likely take you in a bed, very likely, you know?
In a bed at night.
In a bed and at night to make things worse. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's even worse to have the closet in front of the bed.
That's awful. I don't like closets.
Poltergeist.
I watch all of those. I saw all of those. In these paintings, my incipient delirium is available that he probably has a very high fever. He's rather seriously ill. High fever. My incipient delirium perhaps had caused me to take deep interest, so that I bade Pedro to close the heavy shutters of the room. Que cerrara las pesadas ventanas. Quedó hermético cerrado en la torre, ¿verdad? Since it was already night, to light the tongues of a tall candelabrum which stood by the head of my bed, and to throw open far and wide the fringed curtains of black velvet. Yeah, to throw open, abrió más bien, y las abrió así, lo más que se pudiera, ¿verdad? Far and wide the fringed curtains of black velvet which enveloped the bed itself. Who can sleep in a bed with black velvet, for Christ's sake? Si les cuento una historia, no me la van a creer. No se las he contado. Es una obra maestra del humor negro y es espeluznante. Una vez fui al velorio de un amigo en Jardines del Recuerdo, la que queda allá por Don Bosco, la funeraria. Y el amigo estaba en el primer piso, en alguna de las salitas del primer piso, con los deudos y la gente llorando. Y llega uno de los muchachos y me toma por Don Jack, venga, usted, Don Jack, suba al segundo piso, venga, tengo algo que enseñarle. Mire este ataúd que tenemos aquí. Este es el ataúd para gente como usted. Mira este ataúd, vea. No, pero voy a abrírselo. Mírate, toque el revestimiento, es terciopelo puro, mire, tóquelo. Usted sabe lo rico que se siente eso en la piel, mire, tóquelo. Esto es para gente prominente como usted. Usted se ve ahí en ese ataúd. No me veo, por favor, y déjeme irme de aquí. Esto me parece de un gusto atroz, es espantoso, no quiero ningún ataúd, me van a cremar. No, pero Don Jack, mire, tiene una ventanita, por si acaso quiere que lo vean, tiene una ventanita, y es de madera de caoba del Amazonas, y esto me salió con todo, pero cuando insistía, es para usted, es para gente como usted. He was a goal. He was not a salesman, he was a goal. Era un grave digger. Era un personaje macabro, un vampiro. Ya me mató el viejo. Me mató y me veía en el fondo del ataúd y me lo quería vender. Según él, yo nunca he visto estrategia más torpe para vender algo. Tóquelo, Don Jack, viera qué bien se siente en la piel. ¿Se imagina qué rico se siente este terciopelo negro? Por supuesto. Qué horror, compañera. Qué horror. Que quede constancia en esta grabación de lo estúpida que es la criatura humana. Y me fui con los pelos parados de punta de ahí. No volví ni quise verlo más. Ya tenemos otros modelos de ataúd. No quiero ninguno. Me voy. Adiós. Qué horror, qué horror. ¿Cómo puede gente ser tan torpe? Cuando era uno joven, lo llamaban a uno para ofrecerle paquetes para turismo de aventura, de alto riesgo. Sube al Vesubio, tírate por las cataratas del Nágara, haz un ras por el Zambeze, esto, el otro, en un safari, ve a la aurea boreal, sube al... Y después de cierta edad, ya no te llaman para ofrecerte esas cosas. Don Jack, tengo aquí un plan de pagos para una bóveda, una cripta y también un columbario, y tenemos urnas de diferentes precios. ¿Quiere una urna en porcelana de Limoges? Podemos poner una urna, pero tenemos... ¿Cómo es posible? Está bien que esté viejo, pero es que ya me están matando, Lili. No es posible. No es posible. Antes me llegaban todo tipo de cosas. Antes me llegaban anuncios de escort girls, ¿verdad? Con frecuencia. Escort girls, escoge a la chica de tus sueños, bla, bla, bla. Nunca pagué una escort girl, pero me llegaban. Ahora que me van a mandar una escort girl, me pueden mandar la momia, me pueden mandar a un empleado de pompas fúnebres, a un sepulturero. Es horrible, Lili, es horrible. Yo la semana pasada cumplí 63. Yo no me siento viejo. No me siento peor que toda mi vida. Siempre he sido hemofílico y tengo problemas de salud, pero me siento como siempre me he sentido. Toco el piano igual que siempre, escribo, tengo el mismo nivel de energía que siempre. Yo no me siento viejo, pero sí advierto que el mundo me trata como un viejo, que el mundo ha empezado a tratarme como un viejo. Y eso es aferente, viene de afuera hacia adentro, es centrípeto, viene hacia acá, no es centrífugo, es centrípeto, viene de afuera. El mundo te cuelga el San Benito de viejo, te obliga a aceptar la condición de viejo y no te puedes rebelar. Otro día estaba en una esquina y una muchacha muy linda se me acercó y me dijo, ay, me reconoció, seguro me oyó en algún recital y viene a saludarme. Y viene y me agarra del brazo y me dice, Lili, oí. Doncito, ¿quiere que lo ayude a pasar la calle? Doncito, ni siquiera doncito, ¿quiere que lo ayude a pasar? No, corazón, no, yo paso muy bien, yo todavía corro y compito como Usain Bolt. Yo paso sin problemas, no sé, gracias, en todo caso, corazón, gracias. It was very disappointing and very disturbing. Doncito, ahora resulta que soy doncito.
Tiene algún beneficio en el banco, eso sí.
¿Ah?
Lo pasan de primero.
Ah, sí. En el EVAIS el otro día estaba haciendo fila. Ay, don Jack, usted tiene que ir adelante, brínquese todo eso. No, todavía no soy adulto, tengo 62, no soy adulto, me faltan 3, ya me está robando 3 años de mi vida. No, quiero estar en la fila, déjeme en la fila, es mi derecho estar en la fila bajo el sol y la lluvia y se me va a parar un sopilote en la cabeza, pero quiero estar en la fila, no me quiten de aquí, protesto. Es terrible, amigos, es terrible, ¿verdad? Y la muchacha linda, yo estaba todo feliz. Ay, me reconoció de algún artículo, alguna cosa. De don Jack, qué placer conocerlo. Viera cómo lo he admirado durante... No, nada de eso. Doncito, ¿quiere que lo ayude a cruzar la calle?
Pero también el espíritu está todavía muy joven.
No, yo me siento muy joven. No me siento peor de lo que... Es que siempre he tenido mala salud. Entonces, there is nothing new about that for me. Es mi estado de nature. Mi estado de natura es ese. Yo no me siento viejo. Lili, mi vitalidad es la de siempre. No he bajado, pero sigo a toda velocidad. Pero desgraciadamente el mundo sí te empieza a dar un tratamiento de viejecito y eso es muy perturbador. Que debo ir ya a hacer lo que Carlos María Ulloa, a reservar un cuartito y tal vez ahí como que no es posible. Yo me rebelo contra eso.
Sí. A eso se le llama edadismo.
Edadismo, sí. El edadismo, sí.
Y se censura mucho ahora porque ciertamente se insulta a las personas a través de supuestamente tratarlas con consideración cuando la persona no está pidiendo nada. No está, por ejemplo, ya se considera que decirle viejito a alguien, aunque sea una persona de 90 y tantos años, es irrespetuoso. Claro. Hoy día es irrespetuoso.
Mi abuelo, que padeció siempre de creerse joven, viejo más ridículo, y llegaba y estaba, se paraba de manos y caminaba de manos. Había sido deportista y muy buen futbolista. Incluso fue un ídolo en sus...
¿Tenía derecho?
Sí, pero llegaba para caminarse de manos para demostrar. Y mi abuela, viejo loco, te vas a caer y te vas a quebrar. Yo no te voy a estar cuidando de la cama con la columna quebrada, ridículo, ponerte en serio. Y una vez llegó furibundo, venía cabreadísimo. Mira, lo que dice en el periódico hoy, muere anciano de 65 años. ¿Cómo? A los 65 no sé, pero yo tengo 75 y no me siento anciano, pero no es un periódico así, hay que denunciarlo. Y llegaba el descaro, la canción de Julio Iglesias, llegaba para provocar a mi abuelita, llegaba cantando. Tú tenías 15 años, yo no había cumplido aún 76. Y ve qué descaro. Tú tenías 15 años, yo no había cumplido aún 76. Ay, qué bien, y yo más loco, porque dije yo no heredé esas cosas. ¿Cómo estamos de tiempo, corazón?
Ya estamos.
About.
We are at the time when we ask you to let us go with a melody.
No question about that.
But this has been a very, very, I would say, energized session. We got to listen to your stories, and definitely Poe always brings a crowd. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. As Jack said, for next week, we are going to have a pause only because a lot of people are going to go on a different scenario. And so we're going to also let Jack rest for the week, and that will allow us to invite you
vas
to
a
the
dejar al
sessions.
vas a dejar al doncito que tenga un
No, we think that young people, this is the younger generations need a break too.
Yeah, you're right.
Need a break, right?
You're absolutely right.
So yes, we're going to invite the younger generations to come and join us always, which are all of you. We had a lovely evening, Jack. Thanks to you.
Thank you, sweetie. Thank you. Thank you very much. I went too much into the anecdote department, but
we enjoyed it.
I'm a doncito. I should be treated with a little consideration.
So,
Qué alegría ver el amiguito. Usted es nueva, ¿verdad?
Sí,
Pero espera, ahora siga llegando.
voy a tratar.
Me dolerá no tenerla, porque usted es una presencia muy...
Estuvo en el recital.
Yo estuve en el recital, me gustó mucho.
Sí, el recitalito estuvo bonito. Ahora
y
tengo
tenemos
otro.
un recital.
En noviembre, sí, creo que es el 12 de noviembre. Pero yo les estoy reminding you because I need you all there. Since I'm not precisely gaviota, I need you all to be there. Chopin, Fabio. Chopin para vos. Gracias, queridos amigos. Y gracias a la amiguita que grabó esta muy heterodoxa clase.
Muchas gracias. Ella es parte de nuestro equipo de mercadeo.
Maravilloso.
Y yo también estoy muy contenta.
Gracias, corazón. Gracias.